Hi, and welcome to another episode of Synergy of the Rose. In this week's episode, we're going to look at clairalience. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Claire.
Hi everyone, this is Silvia Jaira.
And getting stuck straight in because most people are familiar with clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience. Clairalience is the ability to smell. And so many of you that are open to your clairs will have had experiences where you've smelt something, but you may have not known that it's got its own name, and you may not know that the
Mm-hmm.
different scents and smells that you actually get are different aspects along the spiritual journey, and you can actually use them as like stepping stones to kind of guide you. It gives you information. Even though it's just a smell, it can give you quite a lot of information when you actually start looking into them, and that's what we're going to unpack in this episode, isn't it, Sylvia?
Yes, I think we're used to or most of us are used to having dogs that smell. You've heard of, oh, the dog smell that person too long, and it turns out they have cancer or they give up on something. But there's actual, like you said, uh, clairalience that it's so new to me. I was just saying, like, I know there's a name for it. I know I've heard of psychics that have that ability, and I know spiritual people that have that ability, and I've never experienced it. And the closest I ever heard to it is the way we said it's through like dogs that have a keen sense of smell, and they can smell this. Well, there are humans that can do that too. That they can smell things, but what we never talk about, I think, it's the meaning behind the smell. And we're bringing you this episode because I just had an experience with the smell of poop or feces, which is very strange because it has been driving me crazy for the past week. And now even my husband has smelled it randomly. We have dogs. We thought it was the dogs. No, we've gone mad looking for this smell, and to a point we had plumbers come and check everything. I mean, we've done everything, and it's still going around as we're sitting here. And I'm telling you, like, oh my god, I just had that smell come by. And I mean by, because when I sat down, it literally, I had the smell like it was just someone right next to me, just must. And so we look, and you felt an energy there. And so we're like, wait a second, let's look into this, because we've
What's the
never actually.
significance?
What's the significance? It's not just because you're sick, but there's actual significance on certain smells. And to my surprise, the smell of poop means there's going to be a positive change in your life, a journey. So that was interesting for me.
I think what's lovely is the way it's actually written up. Is obviously feces is elimination, so it's that releasing of what no longer serves
Yeah.
and leaving space for the new and the exciting to come in. So you're getting rid of the old, you're getting rid of what doesn't serve, and that doesn't mean that it's bad or it's negative. It's just meaning that it's had its time, that cycle's over, you're releasing it, leaving room for the new to come in. And so even though poop can be quite embarrassing, smelling poop can be quite embarrassing,
Yes.
you kind of think, yeah. And as Sylvia quite rightly said, she searched her house, she's got dogs, she was like, oh my god, where is it, because it
Yeah.
wasn't just her smelling it, it was the whole
Yeah.
family. So the beautiful thing from this is Sylvia and her whole family are going and starting a new cycle, which coincides with the full moon and the eclipse and all the energies that is going with that. So it's absolutely brilliant. It's such an auspicious time as a family for her. But of
Yeah.
course, they have to put up this wafting of poop every now and again. I would imagine now you've actually grabbed hold of it and you've acknowledged it, that it will stop, because I know that that's done that. I know years ago when Georgina was little, my sister had holiday property down in Cornwall in St Ives, and she had an old fisherman's cottage,
Mm-hmm.
and very often I would feel the coldness, and you would feel, because there were quite a few spirits there. I mean, it was very active house. And
Yeah, you can smell sometimes, because I do smell that sometimes. But
yeah,
this was very distinct. But yeah,
yeah,
keep going. Sorry.
yeah. But in the house, at times you would have this waft of fresh fish come in. And obviously, being a fisherman's cottage, we kind of knew, and I'm feeling energies. I could feel that that was okay. Occasionally, you would have this smell of rotten fish come in, and that was very malevolent. That was an energy that I used to kind of shoo out of the house, and it would, yeah, and I actually did stuff so it wouldn't actually come in again, because we had a few unfortunate incidences, let's put it that way. It was that when it was strong, it was malevolent, and eventually we had to get it out of the house. Up in the attic, because the attic was converted, I always used to have the smell of lavender,
Mm-hmm.
which was absolutely beautiful, and it would always come in at about 5 in the morning. And within that, the smell of this lavender would wake me up, and then I would hear all the fishing carts, and obviously it's old cobbled streets there in Cornwall still, but you don't have the old push carts with the wooden wheels. But of course you could hear all that, and you could hear all the shouting and the back and forth as the boats were going out and coming in, and all the fish was being brought in. And it's really interesting. So when you get these smells, don't just dismiss them, is what we're
Yeah.
saying. There are lots and lots of smells, and you can actually feel into them. As I said, the rotten fish one is a very common one for really knowing that, okay, there is some negative energy here.
Yeah.
There is a malevolent spirit here that needs to be moved on. But there are lots and lots of other smells that you can actually get that can really help you on your journey, like you said right at the beginning, and
Yeah.
give you stepping stones is where to go.
Yeah. Absolutely. It'd be good to know. So, what kind of smells? Like you said, like we don't really think about the poop smell. I can't believe we're talking about poop, but because it's quite funny. But once I've realized that this is nothing to do with my house, my dogs are actually away, so it's not my dogs, anything like that. Then I had to move on. Like you said, don't dismiss it. I had to move to the next step when I had to bring it up to you. Like, so listen, this is happening. And that's when I was like, okay, this makes sense for me, because my family is actually going through some changes, and that would definitely make sense. But you don't think of that as a positive thing most of the time. So just like the rotten fish, I would assume, oh my God, pooping means this. But like you said, it's releasing, and it's the releasing. It's like, this is gonna sound really funny, but it's kind of like, when you really have to go and you finally release how good you feel. That's the emotion that's gonna come with of that event. But it's really interesting, I think. And I mean, I've had smells before, like you said, lavender and roses. I've had the cigarettes are quite common as well.
Yes, yeah, tobacco
The
smoke.
smell of
Yeah.
cigarette. Those were smells. The ones I would be very careful, I would say, is the smell of smoke. That to me is a sign of danger and beware. I have smelled that before, but I've never considered myself like clairalience, because I just never even heard that. But I mean, I knew there were so many, but I've heard of there's people that can sense smell, but I'd never had a connection. I don't know anybody of my family, because my family goes so back into curanderismo. It's not common in our practices for that. I've never heard of it enough among my elders as well, so I never had much contact or experience with this. But it's good to talk about it, because we need to know that there are all these things out there that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, and I think it's getting to learn, because obviously we we can get on Google, or we can get on Yahoo, and we can get on the searches, and we can get the information of what the different scents and smells mean. There's spiritual significance, but also don't underestimate your own power of knowing, especially if you've always been clairalience. I mean, I hadn't. When I talk about my spirituality, I talk about my clairsentience, because that, when I opened up, that was my strongest. But actually, when I started to think about it, clairvoyance and clairalience has always been with me since I was a child. And yet I didn't really kind of acknowledge those, because that wasn't what I really kind of embraced when I actively opened myself up to my gifts. When I opened up to myself to my gifts, and when I was doing the mediumship work, it was the clairsentient that I was using and was most active with. And so I'd not consciously acknowledged the clairvoyance and the clairalience, even though it had been there when I was a child. And so if you find that you've had these and they've been with you, also learn to trust what they mean to you. Trust whether, when you're feeling into it, is that malevolent or is that okay? And if it's okay, how do I interpret that? What does it mean for me? Because I always know from nursing, I mean, and it was when you were talking then, I was kind of like, yeah, actually, I'd been, because even when I was in my 3D, doing my 3D career as a nurse, clairalience was very big. I could smell when people had infections, and I know most nurses, that comes with training. But also I could smell, when I think about it, I could smell when I knew when people were going to go. And I used to think that was just intuitive, but actually I'm sat here and I'm like, I'm having this little conversation in my head going, yeah, there was a certain amount of intuitive knowing there, and obviously learnt behavior and knowledge, but there was also a certain amount of clairalience in there, because there's a very distinct musty smell when somebody's going to pass. When they're in that place of transition, there is a smell of must. And it's
yes.
There you go. See,
now I'm going like, it's because we don't talk about it enough, and I think we do need to talk more about it, because we're so focused on the set of the emotion and the scene and the physical. The smell is also very important. But growing up now, I do remember my great aunt talking about, this house is going through a transformation. They're going to lose someone because I can smell death. But I didn't understand what death meant. Okay, I thought she was just talking. But when she described it, she said exactly that. It smells like musk. And there's a certain smell to it before it arrives.
Yeah.
And a week later, yes, that would happen.
Yeah.
I just thought that, that was her gift, and I didn't think it was something. But I have smelled that, actually.
Yeah.
Before someone even tells me this person has passed, I said, I smelled it. Now that you mentioned it, when my uncle died, my husband didn't even have to tell me. When he was coming up, I told him, because that smell was there. So, you're right. There is that smell.
Yeah. Yeah. Because we haven't brought it into the consciousness, because it's not been discussed, which is why we're doing this video, because a lot of people out there have got all these gifts.
Yeah.
But they're not actually recognizing them. They're not bringing them into the consciousness. And sometimes when they do bring them into the consciousness, they scare themselves with the accuracy of it.
That is true. Yeah, that's true.
And so it's just allowing yourself to be open. You're not actually invoking anything or instigating anything or setting the intentions just by having that knowledge. It's just nice to know, and it does help you on your pathway. As we said, now Sylvia knows, this smell of poop. I can assure you that in a day or two it will disappear, because the transition of the family would have kind of come into fruition, and it's something to look forward to. I think the other thing is it's also a really good reminder that not everything that's good comes with a pretty tied with a bow smell.
It comes with the smell of roses. To say the least. It's so funny because, like, yeah, it doesn't. But it's interesting, right, with the whole smell thing, because I think we, like you said, we just need to acknowledge it because we've all experienced it, and very true to understand that smell. One of the smells that, I guess, especially poop, it wasn't so much that it was bad. I think for the ones that we have dogs, we're kind of acquainted where we're not like totally disgusted by it because we get a little woofed of that sometimes.
Yeah.
It was more like that. It was just like a little annoyance, like, where's it coming from? But it wasn't like disgust as per se. Like, being somebody like, oh, it smells like, when you open a bathroom and you smell and you're like, oh, I'm gonna puke. No. So that also goes into it. And the one that I was talking about, when you smell cigarettes, to me, the cigarettes, sometimes for me, it becomes two things, because one, I know, since I'm more in tune with the spirits, I can smell sometimes a spirit that was a smoker. And so I know that I really have to tune into that to know if this is a warning, because the smells are kind of like warnings to get you in touch. And so you have to kind of really tune in to see, is this a warning, or am I sensing a presence here?
A warning, or a kind of, hello, I'm here, I'd like to talk?
I think, I mean, as a spirit,
Yeah.
or no, I'm saying, like, if you need to tune in, and if it's a spirit who used to be a smoker or someone or something,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Versus
you very often get the smell
yeah,
as a hello, I'm here type trigger.
yes.
Yeah.
So it's versus the smell of cigarettes, where I don't sense a spirit, I don't sense anyone around me, but it was like a brief smell of cigar or cigarettes, and that tells me, like, okay, be careful, hold on, I need to find out what's happening here. And it usually, for me, it happens if I'm going into a contract or I'm going into something. And I've never put those two to two together, but now when I'm looking back and I'm putting contacts, I was like, oh, I did smell that, and that when I was about to take that job, and that didn't work out, and I didn't listen. I did have that smell of cigarette, as well. So knowing yourself well and what's happening, using all your senses in your, as a spiritualist, is really good. It's always, the spirits are always there to guide us, and they'll use any type of aid they can to help you. In that sense.
Yeah. And it's knowing, again, it comes back to knowing, because you're saying that, because I'm kind of, I was looking a bit puzzled then when you were saying about that, but that's obviously specific to you regarding contracts. I know when there's a challenge coming onto my radar, I can smell stale water. And so that's my kind of like, oh, okay, what's going on here? What do I need to be more consciously aware of here? Because I will get a whiff of stale water. Now, I know a lot of people will go, well, water doesn't smell, but there is a very distinct smell, especially stagnant. I'm not talking about stagnant infested water. I'm talking about just stale water that's no longer alive. And it's got a very distinct smell, because I don't get it with the tobacco. If I smell cigarettes or cigars or a pipe, then for me that is somebody who used to smoke cigarettes, cigars, or a pipe, that wants to come forward and give me a message, either for me because it's a member of my ancestry, or it's because I'm connecting with somebody and it's part of their ancestry and they want to put a message forward. And this is why it's so important to know yourself, to learn yourself, to jot down these little aspects of yourself and start to see the patterns, start to see your energetic patterns, because that's basically what it is your energetic, spiritual, connectional, is that even a word? Patterns. So, You can put in the comments below if connectional is actually a word. But it's learning, is mapping yourself and mapping your energetic connection to the other realm, to the spirit realm.
Yes.
And really homing in on that and taking ownership of it and going, right, okay, and not being fixed, because we've just proven what is Sylvia's warning system is not a warning system, which is why I was a little bit, when she said warning, and I was like, oh, is that spirit coming through? Because for me, when I smell that, it's not a warning system at all, but it is for Sylvia. And this is why we need to be very mindful of not fixing it in a box. And I do think there's lots of practitioners out there, isn't there, Sylvia, that will say this means this and this means that and this means the other, and they'll put it into a nice neat box, and actually that's what it means for them. And I think as practitioners, and I think as spiritual beings, we need to recognize that. Do we look up information when we have a query? Yes, but also take the responsibility of going, okay, does this resonate with me?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what I mean. Yes, the cigarette smell, it's for me, I always have to tune into it to see which one it is, because sometimes it is a spirit that was previously a smoker, and with a message. But when I don't have that sense of there's a spirit there, then I need to ask like, was someone else smoking here, or why does it smell like cigarettes? And it's a very distinctive smell. So to me, I'm like, okay, what's happening in my life? What am I going to this? And I've noticed, like I said before, every time I went into a contract, that particular smell would pop up. So I've made that connection. So it's kind of about knowing when you're about to go into contracts, when you're about to go into negotiations, when you're about to go into buying something or putting yourself where it's a life-changing event, what smells pop up for you, because they're there to find out something that's going to happen, something that will have a change for you. There will be a smell, and just recognize them and maybe sit down, meditate, and find out, okay, when I went to this, what was that smell? Kind of when you said, like, there's a smell of when someone's about to pass, and I'm like, wait a second, I did smell that when my uncle was about to pass. So it's sitting down and getting to hone in into those experience we've had that we don't talk enough about.
And finishing up, I think the other thing that we need to bring into the mix here is smells that trigger us. So be careful that when you are kind of attuning to your clairalience, make sure that you're not biased in your interpretations, because you're still carrying some wounds, some traumatic wounds, whatever that looks like, from childhood, where smells are connected. So it comes back to doing that inner work and being really, really honest with yourself. And if you do have certain smells that trigger you, do the healing on that before you start trying to map your clairalience. Because if you try to do it while you're still carrying those traumas, while you're still being triggered, you will have an unfair, you will give yourself an inaccurate, not unfair, an inaccurate bias to those smells.
Absolutely. Now that you said that, I actually had a friend of mine that she also comes from a long lineage of from Salem, Wiccan, and for her triggering is the smell of fire, of course. And so every time there was a bonfire, she would not go, because she says those are extremely triggering for me. And I couldn't understand when she told me where she came from and her background. It makes sense. So she needed to do a lot of healing for that as well. So, and for her, it was like when she said, "Oh, I had the smell of fire. I can't go there." That would prevent her from going. So you need to know if it's something as well as a triggering, or if it's a warning, or if it's something you need to sit down with those.
You've hit a point there, actually, because that's one of the other smells that I get. I don't get triggered, because obviously that's a witch wound there that still needs healing. It's but I have And you reminded me when you were talking there, I was like, oh crikey, yeah, because I get the smell of bonfires when there's an injustice, when somebody's not being fair, when somebody's lying about somebody in a very unjust way. I get a whiff of bonfire.
Yeah.
And obviously that it correlates with what she's saying, because obviously, so many of us were burnt at the stake and it was unjust, but I'm not triggered by it in that sense, but it does come up as a little warning system for me. There's a lie within that conversation somewhere. There's an injustice within that conversation. And so it alerts me to dig deeper into that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Let us know in the comments the type of regular smells that you get and what they represent for you. It'd be really interesting to see how these work, because there will be kind of habitual ones which we all get and they all mean the same for us, whichever way we come at it, and there will be some really extraordinary ones as well that are very, very personal. And so it'd be really lovely to kind of go, oh yeah, I get that too, and oh yeah, I get that too, because as we've said in this episode, clairalience isn't talked about enough. Many people do it and are not even consciously aware that they're doing it.
Exactly.
They've not taken ownership of that particular gift within them. So let us know in the comments which smells you get on a regular basis, or which are your warning systems, or what shows you what, and how you kind of mapping that out for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, that's it for me. I'm still here intrigued about this poop smell, so that's a new one for me.
So that's bye-bye from me.
And me. And as always, please share and like and comment. It helps us get more content to you. Thank you. Till next time.
Bye-bye.